So we're going to hear the story today of Peter's undoing, his denial. It's a story in two parts, really. In fact, it's a story of two denials. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. First of all, Jesus says, "You will deny me," and Peter says, "No, I won't." And then, of course, he does two denials. So I'm going to read the story in two bits. One bit happens before at the Last Supper, and then the other bit happens after. So I'll read the readings in two bits. The first bit is, they're both from Luke 22. The first bit is 31 to 34. Simon, Simon. This is Jesus speaking. Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. But he replied, Lord, I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death. In some of the other iterations of the story, the denial is a bit stronger. And Jesus answered, I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny 3 times that you know me. So the first denial. The disciples are sitting with Jesus at the Passover meal, a very familiar meal of remembrance for them. They will have done it every year since they were children. But actually, as we will see tomorrow, it has not gone at all how they thought it would. Jesus has deviated from the usual words and introduced new concepts that they probably were reeling from. In fact, it's been a very odd time, all told. And Peter had been one of those that had been sent with John to go and set up the upper room, which probably was odd in itself. Follow the man with the jar of water as you enter the city, if I'd read a bit earlier on. Really? And make preparations there. And then, during the meal, there was an argument about who was the greatest. This is a very unusual meal. And in answer to the question, which one of us is the greatest, who's going to get the best chair, Jesus says, I've come to serve you. Have you missed the point somewhere along the line? And then suddenly, the spotlight is on Peter. Simon, Simon, Jesus says. I hadn't noticed before, until I was looking at this a couple of days ago, that Jesus calls him Simon. That was the name he was born with. But do you remember the first time he met Jesus? Jesus said to him, you are Simon, but you will be Peter. And then at the place where Jesus said, who do people say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Peter had that revelation, and Jesus said, you are Peter. You've grown into what I saw in you. And now, Jesus is calling him Simon. I bet that got his attention. And not only does he say it once, he says it twice. Do you know how many times in Scripture somebody's name is said twice in that way? 7. That tells you something in itself, doesn't it? It's a bit unusual. So my attention was caught, so I had a little deviation. So who in Scripture had their name spoken twice? Can you think of anybody? Martha. Yeah, good one. Who else? Yeah. Yeah, on the road to Damascus. Saul, Saul. Yeah, yeah. I'll put you out your misery. Abraham, at the time when he was going to sacrifice Isaac. Jacob, Moses at the burning bush. Samuel, Martha, Simon Peter now, and Saul. So it doesn't happen very often. And when it does happen, it is significant because it means God, Jesus, wants their attention in a particular way. And that what is going to be said, what follows, is emphasized. They need to hear what is coming next. I wonder if for Peter, the emphasis was actually that Jesus called him Simon, grabbed his attention. But then I also bet that what came next caught his attention, because we've got a fairly tame version. Satan has asked to sift you all. And that you is plural. So Jesus was talking to everybody around the table at that point. Although he said Simon, Simon, it was to everybody. Satan has asked to sift you all. But I have prayed for you, Simon. What's Jesus saying here? Well, I looked up as you know, you'd expect me to do that, wouldn't you? I've looked up what Satan was saying by wanting to sift. And it actually means that Satan demanded, he insisted that he have this opportunity, and that the sifting was a complete handing over of the disciples, a complete takeover of their lives, totally removed from God's hands and put into Satan's hands. That's quite a thought, isn't it? And of course, that's what happened to Job. And the commentary that I was reading, which was a lexicon commentary about the words on Bible Hub, there was a phrase at the end that remarked on what a place to find yourself. And it's quite unusual for that kind of comment to be in that kind of commentary. What a place to find yourself. Taken out of the hand of God and put in the hand of Satan. And Jesus says, but I have prayed for you, Simon. I wonder if at that point, Simon didn't hear anymore. But if he could have heard the rest of what Jesus said, I have beseeched God that you will not fail, that you will not lose faith in me as you go through this. And here's the hope. When you have turned back, you will strengthen your brothers. So Jesus is saying, yes, this is going to be a hard test, and it might seem that you have failed, but you will come back from it. I wonder if he heard that. My suspicion would be that he didn't, because it's a bit like going to the doctors, isn't it, and being told bad news. You don't hear anything else from the moment that you hear a certain word. Nothing else is heard. But Peter leaps in and says, Lord, I'm willing to die for you. I'm willing to go to prison for you, if that's what it takes. And he means it. He proves it at the end of his life. But he's probably reeling at this moment. What does Jesus mean? And of course, Jesus says to Peter, I'm telling you, this is how it is going to be. There's no more to be said. This is what's going to happen, Peter. But hear what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying. Before the cock crows, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. You will disown me. You will reject me 3 times. So we're going to skip ahead through the time of anguish in Gethsemane. We're going to skip ahead, the soldiers coming and Peter cutting off his ear. I mean, if ever you're going to end up in prison, it's by cutting off the ear of one of the guards, isn't it? And Jesus is taken to the high priest, the house of the high priest, and then we have the second part of the story. So this is 54 to 62 of the same chapter. Then seizing him, that's Jesus, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. And when some there had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with him." But he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, "You are also one of them." "You are one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean." That's a label, isn't it? Instantly labelled. This man is a Galilean. Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. "Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. So Peter followed at a distance, hides himself in the courtyard, drawn to the fire. Probably the flames show his face and people begin to recognize him, and he's challenged. "You're one of them." You can feel the fingers, can't you? "You're one of them. You were with him." And each time he denied it, disclaimed it, disowned it, rejected it. And I wonder how you feel about Peter and those denials. I wouldn't have done that if I was there. Of course not. I'd have stood up for Jesus. I'd have been defiant in my support of him. Would you? If the possibility of a crucifixion was looming behind, or in front, would you? Whipping, possible punishments, would you? Perhaps you would have kept quiet instead, not done the active disowning that Peter did, but just turned away, walked away, kept quiet, changed subject, answered a different question. There are lots of ways we can do that, aren't there? And the cock crows and Peter is undone. Probably having forgotten what Jesus had said. I'm going to show you a couple of photos. The first one places the photographs. Anybody know where that is? Barcelona. It is Barcelona. Yep. It is the Sagrada Familia. It is the Sacred Family, which is a cathedral that's been being built for, over 100 years. It's 100 years next year since the architect died, and they're hoping to finish it. So if you saw this 10 years ago, it will look very different now. So this is the outside, and the central towers are still being built, as you can see by the cranes. Thank you. The sculptures of the church, of the cathedral, are all outside. There's none, one figure inside. What's inside is light, the light that comes through coloured windows. The windows are not pictures, they're just colours, and as the sun moves, the interior of the cathedral changes from yellow to red to blue to green. It's stunning. I was there just 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the sculptures that are outside, this is part of the Passion facade, so there's the whole story of the death of Jesus. And this is Peter on the left and one of the servant girls on the right. Can you see how big her index finger is? Can you see? A real pointing finger, isn't it? Can you see that? And what's behind Peter? A cockerel. Yeah. Can you see the cockerel? Yeah, the cockerel is here. And these are massive figures. And then, thank you, Esther. Tells a story, doesn't it? Peter, after he has denied. This is Peter undone. How can you get so much emotion into some very stark stone? Crouched down, head down, hunched, lost. And then, just to pile the absolute worst onto what he's just done, Jesus appears over there and looks at him. Looks at him. What I find fascinating is that when Jesus looked at Peter across the courtyard, the word that is used for the way that Jesus gazed at Peter is the same word that was used for their very first encounter on the beach. It's quite an unusual word. It means to look at someone with an intensity of a gaze, absolutely focused, concentrated, no one else matters. It's a gaze, a locked-in gaze, if you know what I mean by that. It is somebody who holds the sight of the other person, but it is deeper than that. It is a knowing gaze. It is a revealing gaze. And it's the moment when Jesus read Peter and saw in him all that he would be, all that he would become, all his weaknesses, all his strengths. And that's how he was able to say, I know who you are, Simon. I know what you've been, I know what you've done, and I know who you can be, Peter. It was that moment, and it's that word. That's how Jesus looks at Peter now. And I wonder if in that gaze now, Peter can find some hope that Jesus has not lost what he saw in him in the first place. Peter has not, what would be the word? Thrown it all in, thrown it all away. There is still hope. And that's the way, of course, that Jesus looks at us. He sees us, he knows us. And even when we've messed up, he can look at us in a way that says, I know you've messed up, but I also see who you are and what you can be. Do you trust me, I suppose, is in that gaze. So Peter may be undone, but I don't believe this is a judgment gaze of Jesus. I don't believe it's a condemning gaze, because that's not the word that was used when he was on the beach. It is that inviting gaze. You're going to walk with me, Peter? You're going to come with me? Peter will still be the rock, the support, the strength, but he's just got to get through this. Maybe a humbler Peter emerges after this. What about us? The multitudes of disownings and rejections of Jesus in all sorts of ways through our lives. What about the smaller ways when perhaps we haven't shown grace when we could? Perhaps we haven't shown love when we could? When we say, yes, I'll pray for you, and then don't forget. They are, in a way, denials, aren't they? But Peter's undoing was not the final word. Because Jesus had prayed for him. And he prays for us. Peter goes to ground after this. He's not mentioned, at least not in Luke's account, until Jesus is buried. So he goes to ground. Is he at Calvary? Don't know. Not according to Luke, anyway. And of course, that's what we do when we are in shame. We hide. We hide in all sorts of ways. But we can't hide from the gaze of Jesus. And it isn't always the judging, condemning gaze that we feel that the way that he's looking at us. It is a loving, okay, you messed up now, but come on, I love you. This can be sorted. Let's start again. And that's the grace that Jesus holds out for you today.